What's up, football fans? Get ready because today's video is absolutely packed with updates, rumors, and insider talk as we dive deep into everything surrounding the 2025 NFL Draft. We're just days away from one of the most exciting nights of the year for football junkies, and things are heating up fast. There's been a flood of new information, whispers from the league, and shifting projections, and we're going to break down what all of that means for the teams looking to reshape their future. Let's start by looking at how things are shaping. Up at the very top of the draft board, the buzz right now is all about Cam Ward. Every signal points to Tennessee locking him in as the #1 overall pick, unless we see a last-minute shocker, which, let's be honest, wouldn't be totally out of the question during draft week. Ward is looking like a done deal. After that, it gets a little murkier, but still loaded with talent. Travis Hunter is widely expected to go in the top 2, and there's a strong possibility he's picked second. Abdul Carter is another name to watch closely. He's got top 4 potential written all over him, but his exact draft position is still surrounded by some uncertainty. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest mysteries heading into this draft. Shada Sanders. The quarterback has been under the microscope ever since last season, and multiple teams have conducted extensive evaluations in him, including the New York franchise. There's a lot of smoke suggesting that they could make a move for him, but here's the thing. While he's in the conversation for the 3rd pick, it's far from guaranteed. If he does get picked 3rd, then you can bet Abdul Carter falls to 4th. But if Shador slides past that 3rd spot, Carter might just leapfrog him. It's this kind of unpredictability that makes this year's draft so thrilling. And then we've got Jacksonville. Now here's a wild card if there ever was one. There's been growing talk about the Jaguars doing something unexpected. One name that keeps coming up is Mason Graham. A lot of analysts, myself included, have pointed to Graham as a strong fit for the Jaguars. His name has gained traction in recent days, and he's quickly become one of the fan favorite predictions for that pick. Jacksonville is being viewed as a team that could really shake up the 1st round. They've got a lot of needs and a lot of flexibility, which makes them dangerous to predict. Another curveball that's been floated around is Ashton Gentry. Word is Jacksonville might be eyeing a move up in the order to beat out teams like Chicago or Dallas in pursuit of him. Personally, I'm not entirely sold that they'll make that leap, but if they do, the implications could be massive. If they try to jump ahead of Las Vegas to snatch up Gentry, it would cause ripple effects across the board. Another name connected with them is Teteroa McMillan, or T-Mac as some like to call him. He's a dynamic wide receiver who's being floated as a possible pick if the Jaguars want to add firepower to their offense. If Jacksonville grabs T-Mac, that could set off a domino effect that reshuffles the rest of the 1st round. Because, honestly, if they don't take him, I'm not sure who else would be in position to make that move. Meanwhile, the Raiders seem dialed in on both Gentry and Membu, which tells us where their priorities lie. There's even some chatter about Jalen Walker being a surprise pick for Las Vegas. And speaking of surprises, the Georgia defensive duo of Walker and Mikael Williams could see a tug of war between teams like Carolina and New Orleans, both of whom are looking to strengthen their defensive line. Dallas, sitting at the 12th overall pick, is watching all of this very closely. Their ideal target is a top-tier receiver, and with Liam Cohen steering the offense, they are clearly leaning into a pass-heavy scheme. So the question becomes, will Teteroa McMillan still be available when they're on the clock? If he's gone, it could force them into a different strategy entirely. Back to Shador Sanders for a moment. The air of mystery surrounding his draft position is thick. He's a talented quarterback, no doubt, but teams are playing their cards close to the chest. Both New York and Cleveland have shown strong interest in him, and there's even been talk about them trading back into the 1st round to grab him. If he slips, it's unlikely he goes 2nd overall, but 3rd, 34th, or somewhere in between. It's anyone's guess. There's also the possibility that some teams have concerns after interviews or evaluations didn't quite hit the mark. And this is the part of the draft that gets really interesting. Teams aren't just drafting players, they're playing poker. Some are hoping Sanders gets picked early so another target slips through to them. Others are looking to move down and gather picks, hoping to snag their guy later at better value. Reports suggest that nearly a quarter of the league is actively exploring trade down options. That's a massive number. One team in particular, known for valuing draft capital and trading back, is almost expected to move down even if the deal isn't in their favor. It's part of their philosophy, and they've done it before, but who's going to be bold enough to move up? That's the big unknown. This draft doesn't look like a seller's market. There just aren't that many teams itching to jump into the top 10. A few might try to reach for a lineman or a playmaker, but most front offices seem content to let the board fall as it may. And if you're a team sitting there with multiple needs and limited resources, sometimes standing pat is the smartest play. There's one team sitting at 7th that's been getting a lot of attention. The thinking is that they're ahead of another franchise in the pecking order and could have their eye on one of 3 or 4 key players. There's even a possibility of a surprise pick from a lesser-known program. Not impossible, just unlikely. And if another top player starts to slide, that could change everything. Meanwhile, one team is clearly focused on rebuilding their offensive line. They're not doing it just because one player's career hit a wall last year, though that did happen, but because the line as a whole underperformed. The trenches were a problem, and they need answers fast. Multiple names have been thrown around as solutions, and it's clear that protecting the quarterback is priority number 1 for them moving forward. Continuing right where we left off, let's dive deeper into the chaos, strategy, and mind games that define the NFL draft season. We're in that intense, unpredictable window where one team's decision can set off a chain reaction that completely flips everyone's board. And one of the most intriguing stories this year is about Jalen Walker and Michael Williams. There's a growing belief that either one of them could be selected earlier than expected. Some insiders even think they could be flipped, one going to a team originally projected to take the other. That kind of scenario would make perfect sense in the first round, where fit often outweighs raw ranking. There's also a team picking around the 10th spot that's keeping their fingers crossed for one specific player to fall to them. The buzz is that they see him as a central piece of their offensive vision, someone who fits exactly what they want to build. Word is this player might be in the top 3 talents in the entire draft class. But realistically, hopes of him slipping that far are starting to fade. When you look at how the draft board is lining up, along with some medical red flags on other prospects, the odds of him falling to 10 are shrinking fast. So unless we see a huge trade or a stunning reach, fans of that franchise may have to let go of that dream. And speaking of trades, let's be honest, this doesn't look like the kind of draft that's going to spark a ton of trade-up action. The value just isn't there for the teams trying to sell. The sense around the league is that it's going to be a buyer's market, and most general managers know that. We're not likely to see a feeding frenzy for top 10 picks unless someone absolutely falls in love with a quarterback or a premium edge rusher. Without that emotional push, most teams seem content to wait it out and stick to their slots. Now let's shift gears and talk about one of the most polarizing prospects, Shedeur Sanders. We already mentioned the uncertainty surrounding his draft position, but it's worth stressing again. There's no clear path for him right now. Teams like New York and Cleveland have done their homework on him, but neither has committed to making a move. Some teams that had interest earlier may have cooled off, possibly due to concerns raised during interviews or private workouts. And then there's the timeline. Will he go top 5 late first or slide into day 2? Nobody really knows, and that's what makes this so fascinating. It only takes one team to fall in love and shake everything up. There's a belief that some teams are actually rooting for Sanders to be taken early, not because they want him, but because it would push other valuable players down the board. That's the chess game at play. You don't just scout players, you scout the room, the other general managers, the tendencies, the traps. Everyone's thinking 3 steps ahead, trying to position themselves for that one perfect opportunity. And while we're on the topic of uncertainty, let's talk about trade candidates outside the draft pool. Veterans whose futures could be affected by what happens on draft night. There are whispers that a few big-name players might be on the move, especially those nearing the end of their contracts. A quarterback or 2 could be available, and several tight ends are reportedly in play as well. The cornerback market is murky, with a couple of names essentially off limits and 1 or 2 others potentially available under the right conditions. One team in particular has been linked to a possible move involving a corner, depending on how the first round unfolds. Then there's the issue of positional value. Teams are still figuring out how much they're willing to invest in linebackers. this year. It's no secret that this class doesn't have elite level off-ball linebackers. There are a few solid guys, but the drop-off in talent is steep after the first 2 or 3. On my personal board, there's one guy who stands out as clearly top tier. After him, the talent pool gets shallow quickly. That's going to make life difficult for teams who still need help at that position but don't want to overreach. In fact, the ranking gap is so wide that you might see someone projected in the late second round suddenly get scooped up in the 20s just because there's no one else left at that level. It's a classic supply and demand dilemma. There's also speculation that some teams might draft a linebacker early just to secure that position, even if they have more pressing needs elsewhere. It's a gamble. But sometimes that's what the draft is. Educated risks, strategic bets, and praying your scouting report is better than everyone else's. Of course, there are also veterans whose names have surfaced as potential trade pieces. Some are considered expendable due to roster depth, others because of contract situations. Take someone like Emmanuel Sanders. His name's been tossed around, and it wouldn't be shocking if he ends up being part of a deal during or after the draft. The same goes for players like Jalen Hyatt. While he's often linked to the Cowboys, there's not a lot of buzz suggesting the Giants are eager to move him. On the other hand, guys like Treylon Burks feel like they're on the block. It's less about teams chasing them and more about their current squads trying to offload them. And then there's Evan Neal. No one's expecting a trade now, but imagine a scenario where the Cowboys target him in free agency in 2000. And 26. They had heavy interest in him during his draft year, and if he hits the open market, don't be surprised if Dallas jumps at a chance. Meanwhile, Kayvon Thibodeau could also be on the outs in New York, especially if Abdul Carter ends up landing there. Add Brian Burns to the mix, and suddenly there's no room left on the edge. That could lead to a trade for the right return. Tyree Wilson and Defoe have also underperformed relative to expectations, opening the door for movement there. Over in Cleveland, Greg Newsome might be available too, with Travis Hunter possibly sliding into that role, and the Browns having solid cornerback depth already. Newsome becomes a luxury they might be willing to deal to address other areas. There's also growing buzz around several mid-draft players who could sneak into the first round or be immediate targets in round 2. Some scouts are saying not to sleep on the linebacker from that powerhouse program, who might get picked earlier than projected depending on how things play out with the top edge guys. There's a tier drop-off after the first few names, so any edge defender or linebacker that flashes high upside is going to draw interest quickly. We're also seeing some smoke around potential wide receiver trades. One veteran has emerged as a prime target for a new team, while another receiver from a major university has been labeled unpredictable. Teams can't quite get a read on him. That lack of clarity makes him a risky option, especially if there are more consistent talents available. So where does all this leave us? Honestly, we're staring into a draft full of chaos. So many scenarios, so many potential trades, so many question marks. One wrong move by a team and the entire night reshuffles. All it takes is a single surprise pick in the top 10 and suddenly your mock draft is shredded. That's the drama. That's the beauty. That's what we love about the NFL draft. And with all this movement, intrigue, and uncertainty, one thing's for sure. There's never been a better time to be a fan of this league. The stakes are high, the pressure is real, and history is about to be written. Let me know in the comments who you're hoping your team picks in the first round. Do you want them to stay put, trade down, or roll the dice and move up? Let's talk it out. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Milton Williams, the defensive tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles, has finally broken his silence, and he did not hold back when it came to discussing the Dallas Cowboys. In a recent interview, Williams expressed his disdain for the Cowboys, calling them out for what he perceives as their lack of respect and competitive edge. Known for his intense focus on the field, Williams' words have ignited a firestorm of reactions across the NFL, particularly in the NFC East. For years, the Eagles and Cowboys have shared a fierce rivalry, but Williams' comments take it to a new level. The defensive lineman, who has been with the Eagles since 2021, has seen firsthand the intensity of matchups against Dallas, and he doesn't mince words when describing his feelings toward the franchise. They don't know what it takes to really compete at the highest level. Williams said, pointing out the Cowboys' often inconsistent playoff performances and their inability to make it past the divisional round in recent years. His frustration seemed to go beyond just the Cowboys' lack of postseason success. It's not just the fans or the players, it's the whole organization, Williams continued. They think they're always going to be on top just because they have the star on their helmets, but we've shown them time and time again who the real contender is in this division. His remarks were clearly aimed at the Cowboys' historic reputation as America's team, which he believes doesn't match up to their on-field results in recent seasons. Williams' words also carried a personal edge. He reflected on the competitive battles between the two teams, particularly in the trenches. I've had my battles with their offensive line, and they know what it's like to get pushed around, he said. They talk a lot, but when it comes to real football, we're the ones who dominate. His assertion is grounded in the Eagles' recent success, having clinched the NFC East title and appeared in the Super Bowl, while the Cowboys have consistently faltered when it matters most. The Cowboys, known for their high-profile players and fan base, haven't shied away from the rivalry either. However, Williams' candid comments have given the Eagles a louder voice in this long-standing NFC East rivalry. Many fans and analysts have been quick to react, some defending the Cowboys' honor, while others back Williams, highlighting the Eagles' superiority in recent seasons. As the NFL season draws closer, it seems that the animosity between the Eagles and Cowboys will only intensify. With players like Williams at the forefront, the rivalry is poised to take center stage once again. For now, the Eagles' defensive tackle has made it clear that he's not backing down, and the Cowboys may have to brace themselves for another heated season of battle. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.